the Military Liaison Committee, but we knew we had the military coordinate with us, like declassification. Of course, Doc Loper succeeded LeBaron, and when it came time to declassify information for development of commercial power, why, we had a meeting, and of course the Military Liaison Committee objected, and I said, well, Doc, you know the answer, don't you? You have the right to protest to the president. But we're not giving. It's going to be declassified. Well, Doc realized that if I had agreed to it, and if Lewis had agreed to it, and that he already had a commitment from Eisenhower, I didn't know he was appealing.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. Of course, it was during your period there where a tremendous number of decisions were made toward building, the first reactors, the shipping port, and the direction in which
that's right. Well,
nuclear power.
That was my own main interest,
and
I think we accomplished a lot.
That all of those directions turned out to be
and of course
very successful.
We made decisions in a hurry, which I don't think anybody could duplicate it since. Like, for example, the shipping point reactor.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The administration had canceled the carrier, which Rickover was developing, and that meant that here is a research organization, development organization, all going to develop about the right size reactor for a commercial plant.
Yeah.
So I know that was one of the first things that I set about to do, was to select what reactor should be developed commercially. And I know I got criticism from Congress because Joe Campbell and I went out and reviewed everything, and I continued to review things. And when the appropriation came up, I know I was over in Congress, and we had advertised for bids, not bids, but proposals on developing the first commercial atomic power plant, experimental. And they asked me, well, who's going to get it? What is it going to be? Because it's quite intense inquiry about the thing. And I said, well, I don't know. I got a good man looking after it, Tamaro. And I said, as soon as we make a decision, I'll inform you. Well, I went back to the office, and Tamaro said, I'm ready to make my recommendations. Duquesne Power's bid is so much better, proposal, so much better than anybody else's, there's no problem. And so I said, okay, well, don't announce it, because we have to clear with several governors, and I have to inform the Joint Congressional Committee, or the Appropriation Committee, rather, and the Joint Congressional Committee. So I asked Lewis to hold an 8 o'clock meeting in the morning. I was going to testify before Congress at 10. The commission approved it. And then when I went to the Appropriation Committee, I said, in regard to the question you asked yesterday, it's going to be announced Sunday. That is Duquesne Power and Light's proposal to build a reactor a power plant at shipping port. Well, they got irate. On the base, how could I say I didn't know a day before and then announce it and have it already in a press report? I said, because I've got a good staff, I have confidence in them. He got all the answers I had asked him to get previously, but I haven't bothered to check every move he made. And the commission approved it this morning, special meeting. Well, they made me put it in writing finally. It's a sequence of events on the thing.
I'll be there.
But it shows you can make decisions in government if you have. The other deal I had with Lewis was that he would never openly oppose anything I recommended. That we'd thresh it out in private.
Oh yes. Well, that arrangement worked very well, and you got decisions fast and got things done.
Of course, we had eventually the Lewis's problem of antagonizing Anderson and Murray. But I always regretted that Murray-Lewis straws issue ever came up, because they're both for the same things.
That's right. It was a matter of personalities, but fundamentally they believed in the same things.
Yeah, they believed in the same thing. Now, I had no problem working with Murray.
Yeah.
I'd go around and see him, except when it would be an issue, that he had directly decided to confront Lewis with.
But apparently sparks flew every time that they met on this.
But then, of course, when I left, I went in the consulting business, and again, I was doing the same thing on all these new technologies. How do you explain to, at higher levels, what it's all about? And there, of course, I worked with Westinghouse and Yankee, Bill Webster at Yankee, and we developed the Yankee plant. In fact, there people say, how did you ever get on so many sides? Because I was working for Westinghouse as my main client on producing and developing reactors. Bill Webster insisted I work for him in building the Yankee. And I said, Bill, how can I work for your contractor and also work for you? He said, well, Nick, he said, I've always found you objective. All I ask is that you don't try to get into the cash business. I mean, just unless we ask you to. If Charlie Weaver and I agree that you should settle something, we'll call on you and tell you we want your opinion. But otherwise, you stay out of our arguments. Except on technical arguments, I expect you to give us both the same answer. And then to complicate that, why, he called me one time and he said, well, you go up to New York and meet with a whole bunch of financial people. He said, they want your views of how adequate our estimate is. Of course, Bill and I had a determination that we would have an estimate that we would meet. And I know I started off when they asked me how good an engineering estimate was, it was within 10%. And I said, I wouldn't even call it an estimate, it's a guesstimate. Mm-hmm. The AEC, in one stroke of the pen, can double the price.
Oh, yes.
I said, I don't know how you predict that. I think Bill Webster and I have an estimate where we have allowed for every contingency we can think of. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty confident we'll live within that. But it's just a guesstimate. Yeah. Maybe double. Triple. But I said, I have built, been responsible for practically all the reactors built to date. Yeah. And I think I've put everything in that you should have in as a matter of contingencies with Bill Webster. Yeah. So I called Bill and I got back and I said, Bill, I think I ruined your financing. He said, like hell you have. Yeah. He said, you've got a new job. Mm-hmm. He said, you have to be the independent engineer and certify to every drawdown on the loan. Yeah. I said, Bill, how can I work for Westinghouse, work for you, and be an independent engineer?
That's fantastic.
He said, well, he said, I've consulted my lawyer, you'd better consult yours. And he said, my lawyer thinks that if you cite the fact you're working for both of us, and you have no staff, that's my other argument, and you're going to rely on Stone and Webster, a contractor, for all the engineering information, that you're safe legally. Yeah. So that was the easiest money I ever earned. Yes. Well, and we finished, I think 13 million below 57 million. Yeah. Because he'd hidden money on the part he was trying to estimate when we were sitting down together, and I'd hidden money so that it's one reactor that was built within the limits. Yes, and a very, very successful one. The other thing that I'm happy about is in the commercial development. See, of course, I also finally got on the board of Detroit Edison and worked with Walker on the fast breeder, which paved the way not for us, but for France. Yes, which is a chapter, incidentally, which needs to be told. As a matter of fact, that book which was written, I think, was a very good exposition of the contributions that project made. Well, that's right. In other words, we were successful. Yes. But we were out politically. Oh, yes. And Lewis Strauss and Clinton Anderson just couldn't see eye to eye. And I know I tried to reconcile a business with Clinton Anderson, but he was just adamant that he said he could crawl on his knees up in front of me, and I'd still just soon hit him over the head with an axe handle. Yeah, so that was... But France took advantage of it, and they now have a reactor going into commercial use, a fast breeder, based on the experience they learned at Fermi. That's right. They went back and duplicated Fermi and made it work, which we'd found the error, it was a mistake. And somewhat of a scale up and so forth. Well, the first was almost a duplicate. Yeah, because they just wanted to correct everything that we had missed on. Yes. And proceeds, of course, I was following at that time Dunray as well as the French. And then in the commercial development, I worked with Westinghouse, and I was chairman of the board of their International Atomic Power Company in Switzerland, see, for sales in Europe. See, I wouldn't get in the selling business in the U.S. because I was also working with the utilities.
Oh, yeah.
But in Europe, we were the sales agency.
Oh, yeah.
And then Framatome was formed by their agent in France to transfer the know-how, which was in the contract, to European contractors. See, when we built the Belgian-French reactor on the French border with Belgium. And Framatome now, as a result of this, has gradually expanded their scope, and finally the French government bought an interest. I think they now own all of Framatome, and Framatome is a leading designer and builder of atomic power plants.
Yes, that's right.
But it's all based on U.S. technology.
All U.S. technology, and one of the sad chapters in American
But that was
technology.
part of the deal with Euratom. And I know I used to go see de Groot. And the deal was that we would cooperate with Europe in passing on know-how to where Europe eventually could produce atomic power plants or nuclear power plants, and based on our know-how, and would be properly licensed.
Right. Well, that's a fascinating chapter in the development of commercial nuclear power, which, of course, in spite of what everybody thinks, the world is going that way.
But I think, in conclusion, I should emphasize that as an engineer, not a scientist, I probably never had an idea of my own. It's always been with an idea of how do you carry out some genius's idea of what can be done, and how do you get it into production and usable.
Yes. Well, of course, that's the important point in the development of almost any one of our big inventions. It has to take the right combination of getting the idea and the technology actually into practice so that our civilization can use those things. And
well, that's the part I've enjoyed. And I've been, that's practically my whole life has been involved in that in-between interface between the originator and the guy that has to put up the money to do it.
Right. Well, this has certainly been a marvelous description of all of the various projects, very important not only to the nation, but also to the development of the peacetime applications of nuclear power, and the principles which you have enunciated throughout this, I think, are wonderful to have on record. I want to thank you very much for this contribution.
Okay, well, Clarence, I've enjoyed being with you.
Fine. Well, it turns out that it's just right about at the end. Is that Jane?
Absolutely.
Yeah.